You wake up on a weekday morning and the first thing you feel isn't motivation. It's weight. Not physical weight, but mental weight. The quiet pressure of knowing that today, like most days, your income depends entirely on you showing up, staying sharp, and not messing up. You check your phone, not because you're excited, but because you're bracing. Emails, Slack messages, calendar reminders, meetings stacked back to back. Somewhere in the middle of all of that, your life is supposed to move forward financially. And that's the part that doesn't quite make sense anymore. Because here's the confusing reality. You have a job, maybe even a good one. You're not irresponsible. You're not lazy. You're not reckless with money. And yet, despite doing everything right, you feel stuck. Raises barely keep up with inflation. Promotions come with more stress, not more freedom. And every year it feels like the finish line quietly moves farther away. You're working inside the system exactly as it was designed, and somehow still falling behind. My name is Salvo, and I spend an unhealthy amount of time thinking about why so many hardworking people in America are doing everything they were told to do and still not building real wealth. Not flashy wealth, not social media wealth, but the kind of wealth that creates leverage, calm, and optionality. And what I've realized is this: most people don't have an income problem. They have a structure problem. Because almost everyone has been taught to think about their job as their entire financial strategy. And that's the mistake. What actually separates people who quietly get rich at a job from people who stay stuck for decades is something almost nobody talks about. It's what I call a shadow portfolio. And once you understand it, you can't unsee it. The shadow portfolio isn't about quitting your job. It's not about starting a side hustle you hate. It's not about grinding nights and weekends until you burn out. It's about recognizing that your paycheck is just one layer of your financial life and building a second system that grows quietly in the background while you keep your stability. Most people only see the surface income, the salary, the bonus, the hourly wage. But the people who win long term are building something underneath that salary that compounds independently of their effort. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. A job by itself is not designed to make you rich. It's designed to make you useful. Jobs trade time for money, even high-paying jobs, even prestigious jobs, even safe jobs. And as long as your entire financial identity is tied to that exchange, your upside is capped and your stress is permanent. The shadow portfolio is how you break that link without blowing up your life. In America, we're taught a very linear story about success. Get educated, get hired, work hard, get promoted, save responsibly, retire someday. That story worked when wages grew faster than costs, pensions existed, and housing didn't eat half your income. But the math has changed. Healthcare, housing, education, and insurance have outpaced wages for decades, which means following the old script now produces anxiety instead of security. The shadow portfolio is the modern correction. Think of it this way: your job pays you for performance. Your shadow portfolio pays you for positioning. Performance requires constant energy. Positioning compounds quietly over time. Most people only optimize for performance. They work harder, they learn new skills, they chase promotions, and those things matter. But they're fragile. One bad manager, one layoff, one industry shift, and the whole thing resets. A shadow portfolio doesn't care if you had a bad week or took a vacation. It keeps working. The biggest misconception is that this requires massive income. It doesn't. What it requires is intentional allocation. People who build shadow portfolios don't ask, "How do I make more money?" They ask, "Where does my money go once I earn it?" That question changes everything. Most people spend first, save second, and invest if anything is left. A shadow portfolio reverses that order. It treats investing like a non-negotiable expense and lifestyle like the variable. That sounds boring. It's not. It's powerful. Because once you build assets that don't require your presence, your job stops being your lifeline and becomes your tool. This is where the psychology shifts. When your entire future depends on your employer, you tolerate things you shouldn't. You stay quiet when you should negotiate. You avoid risks that could advance your career because you can't afford disruption. You optimize for safety instead of growth. But when your shadow portfolio starts generating even modest momentum, your posture changes. You don't need to be reckless. You just stop being desperate. And desperation is expensive. Let's talk about what actually goes into a shadow portfolio. First, it's not one thing. It's a collection of systems, long-term investments, skill-based leverage, optional income streams, ownership exposure. None of them are exciting on their own, but together they create resilience. Think of it like this. Your job is one engine. Your shadow portfolio is a second engine. Most people only have one. When that engine stalls, everything stops. In the US, the most common shadow portfolio foundation is boring by design. Retirement accounts, index funds, tax-advantaged investing. Not because they're glamorous, but because they scale without your attention. A 401k with employer matching isn't just a benefit, it's free leverage. An IRA isn't just a tax shelter, it's delayed optionality. Every dollar you place into these systems is a dollar that no longer depends on your mood, your boss, or your health. But the shadow portfolio doesn't stop at markets. It also includes what I call asymmetric skills, skills that increase your earning power without increasing your hours. Writing, negotiation, systems thinking, management, communication. These skills compound inside a job. They lead to raises, bonuses, and opportunities that aren't posted on job
Hey
boards.
everyone, look what our little
Most
artist
people chase
made.
Wow,
credentials.
it's beautiful.
Shadow
Great job,
portfolio
sweetie.
thinkers
Thanks,
build
Mom.
leverage.
My turn next.
Then there's ownership exposure. This is where many people get confused. Ownership doesn't always mean starting a company. It can mean equity compensation, profit sharing, side investments, royalties, small digital assets, anything where the upside isn't capped by your time. The goal isn't to replace your job overnight. The goal is to create parallel progress. Here's why this works so well psychologically. When you're only paid for effort, rest feels dangerous. When you're paid for ownership, rest feels strategic. That shift alone reduces burnout. People with shadow portfolios don't panic during slow weeks or market downturns. They zoom out. They understand cycles. They know they're building something bigger than this month. This is how people get rich at jobs without ever looking like they're doing anything special. They don't quit. They don't flex. They don't announce anything. They quietly build assets while everyone else argues about salaries. 10 years later, the difference is obvious. One of the biggest myths is that you need to choose between job security and wealth building. That's false. The job is what funds the shadow portfolio. The shadow portfolio is what eventually buys your freedom. They're not enemies, they're partners, but only if you treat them that way. The danger is living as if your job will always be there and your expenses will always be manageable. That assumption breaks people. The shadow portfolio exists to remove that fragility. It creates buffers. It absorbs shocks. It gives you time. Time is the real currency here. People who build shadow portfolios don't rush. They don't chase trends. They don't panic during downturns. They understand that wealth is mostly about staying in the game long enough for compounding to matter. And compounding only works if you're not constantly pulling money out to survive. This is why the first phase of a shadow portfolio isn't about returns. It's about margin, emergency funds, reduced fixed costs, predictable expenses. These things aren't sexy, but they create the conditions where investing actually works. Without margin, every dip feels catastrophic. With margin, dips feel like noise. Once margin exists, patience becomes possible, and patience is where most people lose. They want results fast because they're tired. Understandably. But fast wealth is fragile wealth. Shadow portfolios grow slowly, then suddenly, and the people who stick with them often surprise even themselves. Here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. Building a shadow portfolio requires delayed gratification in a culture that rewards immediate consumption. You will watch coworkers upgrade cars, homes, lifestyles while you quietly invest. You will feel behind until one day you aren't. And by then the gap is permanent. This isn't about deprivation, it's about alignment. Spending less on things that don't matter so you can invest more into things that do. Freedom later is purchased with discipline now. But discipline isn't punishment, it's direction.
Eventually, something subtle happens. Your shadow portfolio starts generating meaningful income. Not enough to quit, but enough to matter. Enough to cover bills, enough to soften emergencies, enough to change how you negotiate. That's the tipping point. That's when your job becomes optional in theory, even if you keep it in practice. And that's where people really get rich. Because once your job is optional, you make better decisions. You stop optimizing for approval and start optimizing for impact. You take roles that teach you. You walk away from environments that drain you. You stop tying your self-worth to your productivity. And ironically, your income often increases as a result. This is the paradox. People who don't need their jobs perform better at them. They're calmer, more focused, more strategic. They think long-term. Employers notice, opportunities follow, and the shadow portfolio keeps compounding in the background the entire time. This is how wealth quietly accumulates, not through dramatic exits, but through consistency. The shadow portfolio doesn't care about trends. It doesn't care about headlines. It rewards time, patience, and behavior. It punishes panic. It punishes ego. And it punishes lifestyle inflation more than anything else. Most people think the enemy is low income. It's not. The enemy is fragile income paired with permanent expenses. Shadow portfolios attack that fragility directly. They turn income into assets, assets into leverage, leverage into choice. And choice is the real definition of wealth, not yachts, not early retirement fantasies. Choice over how you spend your time. Choice over what stress you tolerate. Choice over when you say yes and when you walk away.
That's what getting rich at a job actually looks like. Not louder, not flashier, quieter, calmer, stronger. If this way of thinking feels different, that's the point. Most people are playing the visible game. Salary, titles, lifestyle. The shadow portfolio is the invisible game. And invisible games are where the biggest advantages live. You don't need permission to build one. You don't need to announce it. You just need to start positioning yourself for a future where your job funds your freedom instead of defining your limits. That's the shadow portfolio. And once you build it, everything changes.